What's up, everybody? This is The Juice. My name is Sayre Bedinger here with you as always, and just super excited for today. It's kind of a bittersweet day for a lot of players across the spectrum of the NFL. I believe it's over 1,000 players get cut on this particular day, which sucks. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of those players that get cut on this particular day become assets specifically to the Denver Broncos down the line. And so this is the end of the road for some, but it's not the end of the road for everybody. These guys are going to get opportunities elsewhere in the league. So we want to talk about that. Today, we want to talk about the big Khalil Mack trade today. Denver Broncos fans celebrating, raising a glass. Khalil Mack no longer in the AFC West. And to talk about Khalil Mack today, to talk about a roster cut down day, and to talk about the upcoming NFL season today, we have here with us my good friend, Chris Dougherty. Chris, thanks for being on the show today, man.
Not a problem, man. How you doing?
Doing great, doing great. We have to talk to people about your fan allegiances here because typically on this show we've had only Denver Broncos fans, either me or Brandon. And by the way, Brandon is busy at work today, so he won't be joining us today. But Brandon's got a lot of great thoughts about the roster as well. We talked about it earlier today. So we're going to do a full episode kind of just diving into the Broncos' final 53-man roster. There's a lot of things to be solidified between now and then. So Brandon, hard at work today. We miss you, brother. Hopefully Chris gets to do a show with you and I both at some point in the future, but we'll make that happen. So Chris, talk to us about your allegiances to the Chicago Bears as a fan and how your fandom kind of was birthed.
So if you know me really well, you'll know that sarcasm is it should be my first name, right? But so I actually became a Bears fan out of spite.
Wow.
My uncle was like a diehard Eagles fan, and they were playing the Eagles, I think, in a playoff game in like 2001, I think it was, or maybe a little bit before that. And he was like all fired up for the game and all that. And he was like, big game for the Eagles today. And I'm like, yeah, I want the other team to win. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's my squad, man. Like, that's my team. I'm going with them. So like, just, I kind of like, as I grew up, like, 02, 03, 04, like I just started following them a lot more. And then obviously 06, right? Like, that
Oh
crazy
yeah.
year where they went to the Super Bowl and unfortunately had Rex Grossman starting at quarterback. So I had absolutely no chance, but just obviously fell in love with them over the years. Have suffered a lot of lows, have seen a lot of highs. And today is probably, outside of Devin Hester returning the opening kickoff in the Super Bowl back for a touchdown, watching Brian Urlacher get inducted into the Hall of Fame, probably the highest point for me as a Bears fan.
Wow. Wow, that's high praise. And
Very
it's
high.
going to get even better. I don't know if you just read Adam Schefter's tweet, but it's coming across my timeline right now as we're sitting here. The trade is official between the Bears and the Raiders. The Bears are getting Khalil Mack, a 2020 second round pick, and a 2025th round pick for their 2019 first, 2020 first, 2023rd, and a 2019 sixth. So the Bears are
Dude.
getting back. The Bears are getting Khalil Mack and a second round pick for 2 first round picks and a third, essentially. Which I'm just grinning ear to ear over here because the story keeps getting better. First of all, the fact that Mack was even traded to the Bears in the first place is just makes everyone in Broncos country giddy. But now to see that the Raiders gave up a 2020 second round pick in addition to what they had to have been asking for 2 firsts and a third,
Right.
at a minimum. And so, wow, what are your thoughts on that haul?
Yeah, I just saw that. It's crazy, man. Like, so not only do you get Khalil Mack without giving up any young defenders, right? So you
Good
won't
point.
you simply just add to the young defenders on the team. And then you also get a second round pick, which they gave up, I think, as part of the Trubisky deal. So I think they lost their second rounder next year as part of that Trubisky. Oh no, I'm sorry, it was
Okay.
this year. But no, yeah, they lost their second rounder when they moved up to get Anthony Miller. That's what it was. So they lost the
Right.
second rounder next year to get Anthony Miller this year. So they recoup a second round pick, but it's very similar now to the position that the Rams and the Eagles were in when they went and got their. So essentially, they paid the price for a franchise quarterback with already having their franchise quarterback on the roster, and they added an elite pass rusher. And to really break it down, this is because a lot of people are like, well, 2 first-round picks for a linebacker is insane, but the Saints just gave up 2 first-round picks to draft a rookie linebacker, and so now you essentially get Khalil Mack for what you got
Wow.
Marcus Davenport for, and you get a second-round pick in return.
Oh man, that's amazing. That is incredible. And you touched on it just a little bit, but explain to the listeners the justification for this, because I mean, I'm guessing that the people who are most simultaneously, I'm sure the people who are most excited about this trade and the most like, oh wow, that's a lot to give up, are Bears fans, because the Bears are the ones who are giving up a lot of assets to get one major asset. But at the same time, like you just kind of touched on it a little bit, you have your franchise quarterback in place. Explain the justification for a move like this for a team like Chicago, who's had, I mean, it's got to be the best offseason that they've ever had.
Yeah. I mean, so you think about it, it all goes back to Matt Nagy, right? So Matt Nagy comes from the Andy Reid tree. So you look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, right? In 2017, they sent out, well, 2016, they sent out their rookie quarterback, let him take his
Mhm.
lumps and learned, right? In 2017, they loaded up in the offseason and made a Super Bowl run. Sounds pretty similar
Mhm.
to what the Bears were doing, right? So
Yep.
Trubisky went out in 2017, took his lumps, took his hits, had his bad plays, loaded up this offseason, right? Loaded up the defense, got him some playmakers on offense, and now obviously with this Mac trade, they're going all in, right?
Yeah.
So he runs a very similar offense to Carson Wentz now. It's a very strong mimic job by the Bears to take that blueprint, because it's a copycat league, right? So
Mhm.
they're like, all right, well, how did Carson Wentz, go from a struggling rookie quarterback to an MVP candidate before his ACL injury in just, 1 year? So they took that blueprint and now they're following it.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. And the Bears, they're really opportunists. I mean, historically now, it's different regimes, obviously, different end goals in mind, different rosters to be built around. But nearly 10 years ago, the Bears made a similar epic trade for Jay Cutler, the Denver Broncos star quarterback, Pro Bowl quarterback, Jay Cutler. Josh McDaniels had kind of, I mean, I would say most of the roster he probably alienated at that point. And I really feel like John Gruden's doing the same thing. Either he's cutting the guys that he just simply doesn't like. Either I don't know if it's personal with him. I don't know if it's strictly football. I don't know if he's trying to just let it be known that he's the guy in charge and that's that. But I mean, dang, like that. This is not a good start for John Gruden at all. In you're talking about a 10-year contract as the head coach. And obviously the Raiders can eat that contract whenever they want to, but they'd be eating a lot of money, $100 million over 10 years. And so this to me, from the Raiders perspective, and not even trying to be a Broncos fan in this situation, you give us the real talk on this. What does this look like from the outside at the Oakland Raiders organization?
Oh, it's a really, really odd day, right? Because I don't know if you follow Victor Fur on Twitter,
Yes.
but
Yep.
he had posted that 5 weeks ago at some sort of rally, Gruden was screaming and shouting how they're going to find a way to get Khalil Mack back in the building. Well,
Mm,
now you traded him. Like, one of the hardest things for a team to do is lose the trust of their fan base, because then that leaks into the locker room, and then that breaks up that I mean, it happened with Chip Kelly in Philadelphia. It's happened in a lot of different places with a lot of different coaches. Um, and it just never really works out. And Gruden hasn't even played a meaningful football game, coached a meaningful football game in Oakland, and he's already traded his best player, right?
wow.
So
Yeah.
um, that's the thing, right? So with Gruden, is he was given a decade of total roster control, but
Mm-hmm.
Reggie McKenzie drafted you all these really, really good players, right? He drafted Amari Cooper, he drafted Khalil Mack, he drafted Derek Carr. I mean, he drafted some really solid players during his tenure as acting GM, and then Gruden comes in and essentially wipes that off the face of the map
Yeah.
by sending Khalil Mack, who by looking at the stats was, um, a three-time All-Pro or two-time All-Pro, three-time Pro Bowler, second most sacks in the league since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Inarguable top 5 defensive player in the league at this point.
right. And then you look at it from the Bears' perspective, right? So the Bears go from Butkus to Singletary to Urlacher to now Khalil Mack. So the lineage of great linebackers in Chicago continues.
Amazing. And the Bears have I had to be set right in an opinion earlier this offseason. The Bears didn't have any necessarily star pass rushers last year. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but their pass rush as a group was way better than I thought. I think it was 43 or 44 sacks last season, and I mean that's phenomenal over the course of 16 games. I mean the Broncos bar that's been set is 53 from the years that they won the Super Bowl in 2015, and they probably should have won it back in 2012 when they lost on a Hail Mary to the Ravens. They had 53 sacks in each of those seasons, and so that's kind of the bar of just like over the top excellence that I've set in my mind. And so when I heard the Bears had 43 or 44, I was like, oh wow, that's a high number. And then watching them in the preseason and watching how Vic Fangio's getting pressure on the quarterback, I'm sitting there rewatching this game 2 or 3 days after the fact, and I tweeted out, I was like, I mean, Vic Fangio's defensive scheme is still really good, and he's getting to the quarterback without a star pass rusher. You pay the price for a guy like Khalil Mack, or at the time I said even Shane Ray. You pay a price for a guy like that, and you get them in the building. That to me is a game-changing move, absolute game-changing move. And so, talk about the scheme fit for Mac with Vic Fangio's defense now.
Well, I mean, you go back to your first point about the Bears. The Bears are a very underrated defense, and the reason why is because their offense was so bad, right? So they would be losing games, and teams would think, well, fans would think, well, their defense isn't that good. They were a top 10 defense last year. They were just, they were tied for 9th total in the league in sacks last year without Khalil Mack, right? So, really solid. There's a lot of really good players on that team. Akeem Hicks, who kind of rebirthed his career in Chicago. Leonard Floyd almost doubled his sack production from his rookie year last year and still dealt with a broken thumb injury. Danny Trevathan, who has been a really solid player since he left Denver, and really just been a solid player his whole career. Adrian Amos is coming into his 3rd year. He's been really solid. Kyle Fuller got that really big contract this offseason, so you hope at least he turns into an upper tier cornerback. But then you get Roquan Smith, right? So that your linebacking core is Khalil Mack, Leonard Floyd, Roquan Smith, and Danny Trevathan. I mean, if you can name 4 better linebackers on one team, it's probably only Denver that would have that type of linebackers, right? Seattle has Bobby Wagner and some other guys, but if you look at the Bears roster under the age of 27, it's Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, Trey Burton, Mitch Trubisky, Leonard Floyd, Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, Adrian Amos, Kyle Fuller. I mean, it's just like studs all around.
Eddie Jackson, great player.
Yep. Allen Robinson's only 26.
Anthony Miller is going to be a player.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, to give up 2 first-round picks, I mean, here's the thing, right? So, what you have in Khalil Mack.
Exactly.
We know the Raiders can't draft. I mean, the Raiders had the chance to take Derwin James this year, and they took Colton Miller in the first round.
Bad.
I'm not too worried about giving up first round picks to a team that doesn't know how to draft anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
But
especially,
in terms of scheme fit, I mean, Khalil Mack's a football player, right? So
yeah,
Vic Fangio's going to find a place to play him, and there's a lot of really good, pass rushers on this team. They have Aaron Lynch, they have Leonard Floyd, like I said. So Sam Acho is there too. So Khalil Mack's not going to be asked to be the guy because there's a ton of players on that defense that can play. But I mean, I don't have any questions that he's going to fit in right away.
yeah, that's exactly it. You get a football player like that. I mean, we could go all the way back to even when Von Miller was drafted. A lot of people were criticizing Denver for, well, why are you drafting one of those tweener edge guys to play in a 4-3 defense? And it's just like, you know what? You get the best football players that you can, and you figure out a way to scheme to make them successful, especially defensively, because you can switch your defensive schemes around in the middle of a game. I mean, I think a lot of people think like we grew up playing Madden, and so when you pick a 3-4 base defense, you stay in that 3-4 base the entire game on all three
Right.
downs. But teams are switching in and out of that formation. I would say that they're probably not in that formation primarily the majority of the game. They're probably in nickel or dime the majority of the game, and so
Yeah, I
you've
mean,
got to have guys that can float.
most teams nowadays. I mean, you look at, Arizona was kind of one of the first teams. Denver, for example, we'll use Denver. The one player that nobody talks about because the guy hasn't played in 2 years is Sua Cravens, right? I mean, Sua's been,
Yeah.
unfortunately going through a lot of things emotionally and mentally, and you wish nothing but the best for him. And there was an outstanding article written about him a couple weeks ago, and I can't think of who wrote it, but if you look it up, it details his experiences with depression and all this different stuff. But I think the Denver Broncos got a real ball player in Sua Cravens, man, and I really hope he really kind of shines this year. But with so for example, Cravens played safety at USC, but he's an in the box safety now, right? So then you look at the Cardinals with Deion Buchanan, and so with schemes, it's not really so much a traditional 3-4, a traditional 4-3. It's Seattle was that first team to kind of break the mold of a traditional defense, right? Having your defensive linemen stand up, and the Jaguars do it too with their Leo and stuff like that. And so if you can get 11 guys to find their way to the football, it doesn't matter if you have corners on the line of scrimmage, right? As long as they're flying to the football and not letting other teams score, it'll work.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. And now, like the Broncos in 2015 or even this year, I'd say the Bears are really set up well to do whatever they want defensively. They can come out in any formation, and they've got guys that are versatile enough to be able to play the run, to play the pass. And those defensive backs are going to just be that much better by the addition of Khalil Mack. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's averaging 10 sacks a year. Talking about a guy who creates turnovers just by his presence on the field. He attracts double teams. He's going to open things up for the other guys. Like you said, Leonard Floyd showing improvement. I think that that's going to be one of the most interesting situations to watch there as Leonard Floyd continues to improve with now Khalil Mack on the other side. And so Denver of all teams is excited to get Khalil Mack out of the AFC West because he had 10 sacks against the Broncos specifically. That's 5 more than any other team in the league. For a single player. I mean, Khalil Mack destroyed Denver. Specifically, he destroyed Michael Schofield a couple years ago. 10 sacks, 3 forced fumbles in his career, four seasons, 8 games against the Broncos. I don't think any single defensive player has dominated Denver more than Khalil Mack, and the Bears aren't on the schedule this year. So good news for Broncos fans.
Let's look at it from the Broncos perspective for a couple reasons, right? So you're Vance Joseph, a guy who was almost fired after 1 year, right? You're Case Keenum coming into a new season where, or a new team where, you're trying to figure things out. You're trying to build that chemistry. Now the best pass rusher, not only probably in the league, but in your division is gone, right? So that's 2 games where you're like, all right, I can breathe a little bit, right? Because who else on that Raiders defense scares you? Nobody, right?
Nobody.
Like, it was Khalil Mack, and you're there's so many things happening in Denver, right? You're trying to get a rookie running back up to speed and trying to get him to be your bell cow. And, you're trying to keep Demaryius Thomas relevant. And you kind of have, you also have Emmanuel Sanders who, is a really solid player. But, that chemistry with Case Keenum, it's young and it's new. So you still got to build it up. And then you're also still trying to fine tune the defense. You know what I mean? And so this works out so well because you look at you look at now who, if you're the Broncos, it's just all right. So you pretty much start your season. Everyone in AFC West, except for the Raiders, pretty much starts 2-0 because I honestly don't think the Raiders win 3 games this year. So you sweep the Raiders, right? Now you have a Chargers team that yet again is decimated with injuries and has an old but solid Phillip Rivers. Can you sweep them? Maybe. And then you got the Chiefs with an unproven quarterback and a running back who's set up for a sophomore slump. They signed Sammy Watkins, and he was banged up in preseason. So the Broncos, honestly, for a team that a lot of people think could sneak this division with a 9-7, sneaky 10-6 season now.
Yeah, I think that's the bar that has to be set for Denver right now is get to 9 or 10 wins, whatever way you have to. I mean, they're playing the 4th place schedule. Now you've got no more Khalil Mack in the division, and it didn't require an injury. That's the greatest part about this.
Right.
So, I mean, it didn't require an injury to get him out of there. And so you've got the Chargers who are beat up in the secondary, like you said, and they've got now the best pass rusher duo in the division until Bradley Chubb proves otherwise. And so we're looking at that Los Angeles, couple of games as that's going to be the worst of Case Keenum's season likely for what he's facing up front. But having no Khalil Mack is a game changer. And honestly, I can't wait to see how the rest of the NFC North responds because obviously the Bears got to get after the quarterback. The Bears play in a division that has such better quarterback play than the AFC West. It's not even a competition. And so when you're trying to, if the Broncos were facing that kind of quarterback play, in 6 of their 16 games, that would be really interesting. It would be really interesting to see what they would do differently there because I don't know. It just makes so much sense for the Bears. You've got the money, you've got the draft capital, you got your quarterback in place. You just spent a bunch of money on your offensive weaponry. You just drafted your defensive captain in Roquan Smith. You got some pieces in the secondary. I mean, you can hit more in free agency too. It's not like they're out of money. So
I mean, even before signing Khalil Mack, the Bears have, I think, $39 million in cap for next year, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's going to get I think 70 million of that 87 million guaranteed in the first 2 years, right? So, I think the deal is going to be somewhere around 5 years. Guaranteed money is probably going to be 90, 92 guaranteed. You know what I mean? So you pay him somehow with bonus and salary 30. He gets 80 of that 90 over the first 3 years or something like that. I mean, it'll work out. And it makes it easier to do these types of deals because you have the rookie wage scale. So your young, really good talent is cheap for up to 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. And, a lot of these deals are front loaded, right? So, I mean, you're looking at Dominique Sue, people don't realize, the casual fan doesn't realize how the Dolphins were able to get out of that deal, but all his guaranteed money was gone after year 2. So, he was essentially on multiple 1-year contracts after those first 2 years. So, the Bears are very, very good with contract negotiations and really never put themselves in a position to really, I mean, as long as I've followed the Bears, from an analytical standpoint, they've never really been in a bad cap spot.
Yeah, and that's one of John Elway's points of emphasis as well. This year is the first year that Elway's been willing to absorb a cap hit, a dead cap hit from a player that I think is even at or over $1 million. When they cut Menelik Watson, I think it's around $6 million, but that's the most the most dead money that he's ever absorbed. And so that's smart. That's just being smart with, like you said, the contract negotiations, not going past a certain point with certain players, and then also seeing those players through to the point at which it doesn't hinder your team's cap in order to cut them. It's not like you're paying a high level starter just as dead cap money. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of teams are willing to absorb that, but the best organizations, I think, aren't. And so I like what Chicago did there. That's an aggressive move with a team that has a brand new head coach. Obviously, things are going well so far. They like the progression of Mitch Trubisky. They like the progression of their young defensive pieces. That defensive front with Hicks, Bullard, Floyd, obviously, Roquan Smith. You got that. I mean, you've got the pieces in place that it's not necessarily that they're one player away, but you add that one player to the mix. I think the key here is you make it to the postseason and then you see what happens because you've got a closer now in Khalil Mack that can just shut down the end of a game. If you get a lead, he's going to come in and he's going to be able to help you close out that game. And so when you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. So
Yeah,
that's
and
the key.
you look at the Eagles last year, everybody, halfway through the season or whatever was saying, well, the Eagles don't have a running game. Okay, boom. They go out and send out a 4th-round pick for Jay Ajayi, and Corey Clement ends up developing, towards the end of the year. So, sometimes your one piece isn't found in the offseason, right? So, these days right now, and some news that I just saw on Twitter is looks like Jerick McKinnon might have a season-ending knee injury.
Oh, man.
So, it looks like he suffered that in practice possibly. So, these days are huge for things like this that can happen, injuries and trades. And so, pretty interesting time of year. But, I mean, man, what a way to win. It's crazy. I woke up this morning. It was about 7:50 Eastern time, and Rappaport tweeted out, one team to watch this weekend for Khalil Mack is the Bears. They've been pretty aggressive, but quiet in their talks. And then Schefter, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, just comes and kicks the door down, and he's like, the Bears are straight. And I literally chucked my phone across the room. I'm like, I did not just read that.
Amazing. Yeah, when I read it this morning, I was like, okay, is this a fake account? And I just had to look. I just had to look really quick. But I mean, when you see something like that happen, unfortunately, that is the initial reaction is like, okay, is this real? And then you can enjoy it. But I mean, what a great day for Chicago Bears fans. I mean, this has to be an all-time high for preseason, like not preseason, but pre-regular season expectation level.
Oh, man. I mean, think about how bad this trade really could be for the Raiders, right? So you trade Khalil Mack and a second rounder. I'm going to jab that second rounder in any chance I get, for 2 first-round picks. The Bears believe they're going to contend. So if they make the playoffs, it's at minimum the 21st pick.
Yeah.
Like, you traded Khalil Mack for possibly
21
late round first-round picks.
At best, what would you assume that pick is at best, even if the Bears don't make the playoffs? 16?
15, 6, yeah, right,
15?
mid-teens. I mean, how many guys are you getting a Khalil Mack at 15, 16? No, that's why Khalil Mack was like, what, the 5th pick or 4th pick overall?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, guys like that don't last long, right? Like,
right.
It's just that's not how that works. And then again, Reggie if Reggie McKenzie was a GM, yeah, I mean, I would expect them to get some pretty good talent. But John Gruden, like, this guy still thinks it's 2003. I mean, it's not how it works. So I'm not too concerned about it, to be honest. You know what I mean?
No.
It's not something I think this is an absolute steal.
Yep, it is. It is. You get Khalil Mack and a 2nd-round pick back. I don't care what even if the Bears had given up, I don't know. Even if the Bears had thrown in a player, I think that's a great haul. I mean, for the Raiders to be even willing to include a 2nd-rounder, if it was me and I'm the general manager, I'd be like, no, you'll get Khalil Mack and that's it. You give us what we want. If you want Khalil Mack bad enough, just give us your price and you'll take Khalil Mack straight up.
Right.
But to get a 2nd-rounder, oh my goodness.
And Ryan Pace, right? Ryan Pace got smashed when he moved up 1 pick and gave up a whole ton of draft capital for Mitch Trubisky. And it came out that he was like, the Niners fleeced him and whatever. Anyway, so Ryan Pace in that interview, like right after they traded up for Mitch, he said, I'm a very firm believer that when who your guy is, you give up whatever you need to do to get him, because he's that valuable to you. And,
Yes.
that's the thing about Ryan Pace is he sticks to his guns. If he, in his heart, truly believed that Khalil Mack is worth 2 first-round picks, then you know what? Give him up and get Khalil Mack in his prime. Khalil Mack's not even done with his first contract. So they still have him on that, and then they're going to re-sign him for 5 to 6 more years. I mean, you're getting the best pass rusher in the league in his prime. Like, name one other team that got him for pretty much that cheap. Like, people
No.
talk about it at face value. Oh, 2 first-round picks. Like, it's like in the NBA, right? Like, they're like, oh, well, this guy got traded for 4 first. Like, what was it? The Cavs or the Nets and the Celtics, right? Like, well,
Oh, yeah.
the
Yep.
the Celtics gave up, got 4 first-round picks, right? Well, a lot of those were protected picks, but the Nets were just so bad that the protections went away. Like,
Yep.
so, it's just people at face value see it as a lot to give up. But, let's see what it turns into after 2019, 2020. Like, right, let's see who they pick and what it turns into. But for now, I think the Bears stole that trade.
If Khalil Mack comes in and has 12 sacks and 3 or 4 forced fumbles, Bears fans aren't going to care about those first round picks. You're going to be like, we
Right.
got Khalil Mack. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah,
You'll be sitting
exactly.
there on the first round of the draft with your hands behind your head, watching all these other teams jockey for position, trying to, figure out who the future of their team is while you've got Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
it's a
this is a
no-brainer.
team that is going into they're now the team in Chicago with the longest playoff drought, or championship drought. And then they haven't touched the playoffs in 10 years, almost 10 years. So Ryan Pace knows that clock is ticking, and he knows that fans are impatient, and he knows that, these things are important. And he went all in, and you got to give the guy credit, right? I mean, John Elway was, a guy who is highly criticized for a lot of his moves, right? But
Yeah.
it worked out, and within 2 years of him taking, I mean, he quietly, worked his way, and then boom, Peyton Manning, right? And then he
Yep.
gets, he drafts some really solid players. And, it's a lot of times that one final piece that it's like, all right, this is what's going to push us over that proverbial edge and get us to where we want to go.
Yep. Yeah, I love that move. I love this. I love this move by the Bears. And to me, I think if I was a Bears fan, it would be overshadowing to me any other any other of the roster moves that they're making today. But for Denver Broncos fans, it's really we don't have this kind of distraction, this kind of pleasant distraction from the 53-man roster cuts. And so while Bears fans get to celebrate a little Khalil Mack today, we are looking at guys like Paxton Lynch and D'Angelo Henderson, trying to figure out why the Broncos are keeping Paxton Lynch and why they're letting go of D'Angelo Henderson and why they're keeping 6 off-ball linebackers on the roster and trivial things of the sort. But Paxton Lynch, I mean, making the 53-man roster, this to me is not a shocker. I said yesterday when Brandon and I did another quick podcast that if I was John, from John Elway's perspective, you could go either way on that. What are your thoughts on Paxton Lynch being on the Broncos final roster? It's his 3rd year in the NFL. What are your thoughts on Lynch being on the Broncos final 53-man roster, at least for now?
I mean, here's the thing, right? And I alluded to it a little bit earlier. It's a lot easier to keep high potentially bad draft picks on the roster because they're so cheap, right?
Right.
Like, okay, so you don't. Here's the thing: there's no pressure to play him, right? You're not paying him a lot of money, and the last thing you want is to cut him loose, and a team like New England picks him up or New Orleans, and then like you look like an idiot because they're like, oh well, this is what he needed, and he becomes a superstar, and you're like, oh well, that sucks. Like,
Yep.
so it's
Yep.
like unfortunately, the Ravens let go Brashad Perriman, a guy that didn't work out in the first round, and so it's my opinion on Paxton Lynch is we haven't seen enough of him to know whether or not he's a bad quarterback, right? He hasn't done enough to show people that he's a good quarterback. Is he a bust? I don't know. I don't think there's enough there to say he's a bust, right? I mean, it's hard as a quarterback. It's hard as an athlete to play in spotty situations, right? Like, it's not basketball. Like, you're not designed to come off the bench. That's just not how it works in certain positions, right? Like, in basketball, like, Patrick Beverly was really good for the Rockets coming off the bench, right? And then he goes to the Clippers and like he sucks as a starting point guard,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard. Like with quarterbacks, it's all momentum. It's starting the game strong. It's having a good first drive. But then you ask them to come in the game like cold, like it's different, right? Like in baseball, right? Like relief pitchers know well in advance before they're coming in the game, so they're able to work on their pitches and they're able to get a couple of things worked on, and then they go in knowing what the situation is going to be and they work from there. It's not like that in football. It's very sporadic when a backup quarterback gets thrown into the game. So it's that different mentality, and not all quarterbacks have it.
Yep. Yep. And that's what I'm most interested to see with Lynch as he. Oh, by the way, as we're sitting here, the Raiders traded for AJ McCarron. So
Did they
the,
really?
they did. The day continues to
Wow.
get worse for the Oakland Raiders. I can't believe what they're doing. I just can't even laugh at it anymore. I'm almost getting
Oh,
angry. I'm almost getting upset.
okay.
But whatever, back to Paxton Lynch. I mean, like you were saying, I'm so distracted by this now. Hey, Karen. Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. Okay, so it could be worse, everybody. It could be worse. The Broncos are keeping Paxton Lynch on their roster, but the Oakland Raiders are actually trading assets to acquire AJ McCarron when he could have been had for free back in March, or not for free, but for with no draft compensation involved. So whatever, it's whatever. Paxton, I'm down. You got to have how many inactive players are you required to have on game day? 7,
I think
which
6.
is one of the dumbest rules in the NFL.
6 or 7, yeah.
You can only keep 53 guys on your roster anyway, and then you got to have an inactive list in addition to that. I mean, it's just the NFL has a lot of issues right now, but and that's one of them. But Paxton, somebody's got to be a part of that 6 or 7 inactive guys on game day anyway. And if John Elway, even if it's just John Elway, is the only guy in the building who believes in Paxton Lynch, you've got another year. You can buy yourself some time. You don't even have to keep him all year. You could trade him to another team. I mean, if teams are trading for AJ McCarron, he's been on 3 teams in the last 12 months. He has demand. AJ McCarron is in demand, and that's the state of the NFL. And so that's where the point of Paxton Lynch, if there was nobody willing to trade for him now, who knows what just a year of doing literally nothing could do to help his cause of getting on another team next year. I mean, NFL, it only takes one NFL team. They're all egomaniacs. Somebody will want him, even if it's not in Denver next year. And so I'm just like, about that, I'm just kind of like, whatever. But I think the biggest issue that I take with Denver's roster this year is they cut half their draft class from last year. They cut 4 out of 8 guys. They cut Carlos Henderson, who was MIA for training camp. I don't know how closely you followed that
Yeah, I don't
situation.
know what his deal was. I guess he wasn't needing personal time or whatever. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Kevin Dodd did the same thing in Tennessee and ended up without a job too. So that doesn't seem like the ideal thing to do during training camp, is to not show up.
No, absolutely not. And I think that was understandable from the Broncos perspective. I would love to see them bring him back on the practice squad if he's willing to put his head to the grindstone and work. Because if you put him on the practice squad, when you bring him back up to the active roster, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when you bring him back up to the active roster, it's a different contract that he has to sign, and then he becomes eligible for restricted free agency in 3 years. That's what's happened with guys like Matt Paradis, Shaquille Barrett, anybody else that the Broncos have ever promoted from the practice squad. You essentially get them for 5 years under team control. And so if Carlos Henderson were to sign to the practice squad and then eventually be promoted to the active roster, that would give the Broncos some extra time to kind of try and build him into the player that they thought he could be, because he was the 82nd overall pick in the draft.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a high draft pick to cut, and then they cut another top 3 round pick in Brendan Langley,
right.
a former wide receiver turned corner.
Cowboys just cut Dan Bailey, surprisingly.
Wow,
That's
wow,
I
one of
mean
the best kickers in the last decade.
yeah, I mean,
Man,
super accurate, and he's also their player rep, so that's pretty weird. But yeah, interesting.
interesting.
But
I
to your
didn't even know
point,
they were having a kicking competition. Interesting.
yeah, I didn't either. But with your point, yeah, I mean, it's very similar to baseball, right? So you call a guy up, their clock to market starts starts ticking. But with Aaron Donald, his situation now, not that it matters, but because he missed a certain amount of time in training camp, he actually wouldn't have been eligible for unrestricted free agency this coming off season. He would have had to wait until 2020. But I mean, obviously it's irrelevant now. But there's a certain amount of, I think it's 4 seasons and you're eligible for restricted free agency, and 5 seasons it's unrestricted. Unless you're cut, then it's a different story.
Yeah. Very interesting. I find this all fascinating. The roster building, as you know, you've known me for a while now. The roster building aspect of the NFL is almost more entertaining to me than the actual games. Just because I think there's so much unpredictability there. I mean, there's obviously unpredictability in games, but it's just very, very interesting to me how teams operate, why they do what they do, what their thought process is. I'm very, very interested tonight at 6:00 Mountain Time, 7 Central, 8 Eastern, that John Elway is going to meet the media, and he's going to discuss why he made the decisions that he made. And I can't wait because he's going to get some hard questions. I mean, you cut half of a draft class from 1 year ago, you're going to get some hard questions. And the guys that made it from that draft class is starting left tackle Garrett Bowles, a backup defensive tackle in DeMarcus Walker, 5th-round pick Jake Butt, who is going to be either a backup tight end. He's coming off injury, so we don't know what we've got. And then your backup quarterback, Chad Kelly, Mr. Irrelevant. Those are the 4 guys that the Broncos have from their 2017 class. So I'm just interested to hear how Elway answers questions tonight, and I'm interested to see his thought process in this, because it's not like the Broncos kept at those positions where they cut players like Isaiah McKenzie, a slot receiver and a punt returner. They cut guys like that, but they didn't necessarily keep anybody who had a similar skill set to that guy and just outperformed them in camp. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, well, Isaiah McKenzie just flat out got beat by player X. Unless you would argue Tim Patrick, the Broncos. I mean, that's an exciting. I hate that we don't talk about the exciting aspect of all this. By the way, Broncos just placed rookie tight end Troy Fumagalli on injured reserve. So that's 2 of their 10 draft picks this year that are not going to be on the active roster, but that's it. 2 out of 10 draft picks. And then they had undrafted free agent Philip Lindsay make the team. So 9 rookies by my count are making the squad. So that's cool. That's actually really, really good. But anyway, so with guys like that, like Tim Patrick, who's an exciting player who had a great camp, a great preseason, you don't talk as much about the guys who won jobs as you do like, well, why are they cutting D'Angelo Henderson? I thought he was going to be a really good running back, when in reality he would have been the 4th running back on the pecking order and would have needed a bunch of injuries to get any playing time. And so there's certain justifications for other players, but I think the most surprising aspect of what the Broncos did today is cutting half of that 2017 draft class 1 year into it. Very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder, like, that press conference tonight, how much heat is he actually going to take? You know what I mean? Because that's big. You know what I mean? Obviously with the draft, you want to be able to, hit on as many players as you can. You're not always going to hit on a lot of players, but, if who does that blame fall on? Is it your scouting department? Is it Elway, right? The final decision maker? Is it your coaching staff? Is it, for not developing these guys? Where is that breakdown in communication, and why is it happening so soon? I mean, that's quick to walk away from half a draft class from, just 1 year ago. It's, somebody needs to answer those questions, and Elway is really going to be the only one who's in front of the media to do it.
Yeah, hopefully. And I always worry about this the day of final cuts, but hopefully the Broncos will be able to bring back a couple more of these guys than I'm assuming, or that many of Broncos country are assuming, will be able to get back onto the practice squad, because you got 10 spots. And so I guess we'll just have to see where where other teams stand, I guess, on these players as far as how much they liked them coming out of the draft, because it's 1 year ago they scouted these guys. It's 1 year ago that they were like, well, I could have drafted that player. And there's teams with a lot more maybe flexibility on their roster than Denver right now. And so I don't know. I guess we'll see. Guys like Isaiah McKenzie, that's just a talented, freakish athlete who struggled with fumbles as a rookie. The Broncos kept him on the field longer than they probably should have. I don't know. That's the type of guy that seems like the exact fit that you would want for a practice squad spot, but he's probably going to go try and find another team. It's just unfortunate that kind of stuff happens, but hopefully they'll be able to keep more guys than it seems at this point. I'm sure Bears fans have a couple of guys that they've cut today that they're kind of hoping make the roster, which, by the way, that reminds me, when Javon Wims made the roster, right? I mean, he can't be going anywhere, can he? Because every time I watch that guy, he's making plays.
I don't think he's gonna get cut. I think he's okay. I can take a look, but I don't think there was any really surprising cuts today in Chicago. There was a chance that Pat O'Donnell, the punter, was going to get waived, but he ended up staying. Ryan Nall, who like everybody in like the Bears fandom like was obsessed with, the running back out of Oregon State, he got cut, right? And everyone was like, everybody loves him. Niall Davis was released. The one big one was Crayvon LeBlanc.
Okay.
He was released today, and I think what happened there is the Bears really liked the potential of Kevin Tolliver. So, we'll have to see what they do there.
Exciting times. You get excited about these guys coming up, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with the guys who got cut all around the league today. Just a ton of cuts. College football starting up today. It's kind of just an overwhelming football frenzy right now. There's a lot going on.
What a way to start September.
It is. Yeah, it's September 1st. Here we are. We've got college football. We've got the NFL cut day. It's a fun time to be a football fan, that's for sure. So well, Chris, tell everyone where they can follow you on Twitter, Instagram, everything else, some of the things that you've got going on as far as the streaming and everything. Tell us how we can keep in touch with you.
Yeah, so you can just follow me on Twitter at Strikeout. That's the handle I go by when I stream. Stream like a lot of Madden. You sarcastically tweeted at me that I stream World of Warcraft.
No one said that was sarcastic.
No, I love me some Warcraft, man. So I've been playing a lot of Warcraft. The link to my channel is in my bio. Obviously I'll talk a lot of sports. It's funny, before you talked to me today about coming on the podcast, I've been like quietly thinking about, getting back into writing. It's just, you have to have a bunch of time to do that. And I never know if I have the time, you know what I mean? But, yeah, I'm always open to talk, football, whatever team it is. So you can just, again, strike out, with a 0, not an O, on Twitter. And again, I appreciate having me on.
Oh, absolutely, man. We'll do this again because I want to get Brandon. I want to get Brandon on with you because I think you guys would get along really well. You guys both are really creative people. A couple of the most creative people that I know. A couple of people who can wear a lot of hats. Who know a lot about a lot of different topics. So
Terrence Newman announces retirement.
Wow. And look at that. And he's not only retiring, he's joining the Vikings coaching staff immediately.
Joining the coaching staff. Yeah, I saw that.
That's cool. That's actually really cool. Yeah, good for him. That means that Mike Hughes developed well. They didn't have to trade Mackenzie Alexander. That's a win-win. Win-win. Oh my goodness. Get this. Bills are getting a 5th-round pick for A.J. McCarron. 5th rounder.
Brandon Beane is going to have the Bills a really good football team in a couple of years.
Yep.
That guy just knows how to make deals, man. And they drafted really well recently too. So
they did. I really liked. Even though I was down a little bit on Josh Allen, I think the price that the Bills paid for him was appropriate. and I like the situation that he's in there. He's kind of out of the spotlight for a little bit. The Bills aren't going to be expected to be great right away. I think Josh Allen got into a great situation where now he's obviously, I mean, this paves the way for him to be the opening day starter. I mean, I think that's pretty clear right there, unless Nate Peterman is going to be the starter, but I don't see that happening. So, welcome to the NFL. AFC East rookie quarterbacks, Josh
Yeah,
Allen,
right.
Sam Darnold. That's going to be fun to watch. We'll see if anybody can outlast Tom Brady in that division. I don't expect it, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, man.
Well, Chris, this is awesome. This is awesome, man. I'm glad that you came on. You and I have had a lot of great talks over the years. I'm glad we finally got to get one out in podcast form. This is awesome. So excited to have you back on the show again. Excited to continue to talk Broncos with everybody. We'll do a full roster review episode here in the coming days. Obviously, the Broncos are going to set one today, but it's usually not the final one. They usually tweak it. There'll be practice squad to discuss after Sunday. So we'll get back with you early in the week next week and just talk over what the Broncos are doing. What story are we going to see from this 53-man roster and 10-man practice squad? So that'll be exciting. We'll do a full episode on that. Brandon will be back. We have some other exciting guests throughout the season, but we'll obviously be having Chris back on because he's not only a Bears fan and expert, he knows a lot about the NFL, college football, all sports in general. So we'll be having him back on. But thank you for listening wherever you're at. Thank you for subscribing. If you're a subscriber, thanks for all that you guys are doing to engage with our content. We love getting to chat Broncos with you, to chat football with you, and whatever else. So reach out to us on Twitter. I'm at Sayre Bedinger. Again, you can get to Chris via at Strikeout. You can get to Brandon at Epic Heckler. Just hit us up. It's football season. Let's talk some football. Let's have some fun doing it together. And as Brandon likes to close us out with, as usual, God bless and go Broncos.